At the last blue hour of evening, a cracked church window rattled over a street already stained with smoke. A loaf of bread slipped from a hungry boy's hands when the stones under his feet gave one hard, living shiver. Far below every grave and ocean trench, where no mortal eye had ever looked, a gate older than empires opened the width of a wound, and a cold laugh rose through the dark. Before this night is over, you will see 4 things that happened in the hour after the abyss opened. The moment the sky went black and the first seal broke, the ride of the 4 horsemen and the rise of the Antichrist, the tearing of heaven above Armageddon, when Christ stepped down into war, and the hour when the dead answered their names, and the city of God stood open in living light. And then came the first thing no one talks about. It was not first felt in a palace or on a battlefield. It was felt in the ordinary places people trust too much. A kitchen where soup was still warm, a market where coins still changed hands, a stairwell where a mother was calling her child home. The air changed before the mind could name it. The blue of heaven dimmed as if soot had been poured into the sky. Crows burst upward from bare trees in one black storm, crying over rooftops like torn iron hinges. The sun did not set, it seemed to fail, remember. That the first seal broke and creation itself reacted like flesh touched by ice. Dogs began to whine at closed doors. Horses stamped and rolled their eyes white. Lamps flickered in houses with no wind inside them. Men kept walking for several heartbeats as if habit could save them, as if a body trained by routine could ignore a world coming apart. But the world was already moving under them. The abyss had opened. In the old sacred tongue it was called the abyssus, the deep pit, the prison beneath all prisons. Out of that depth came Lucifer, once the bearer of light, now so ruined that even his freedom felt like a sickness spreading through stone. He rose laughing, not with joy, but with the sharp delight of a being who had waited through ages to touch the earth again. His laughter was thin at first, like metal dragged over rock. Then it widened. It filled the unseen places between heartbeat and breath. Slow this moment down. See what happened as he crossed the line of his eternal prison. Dust lifted from the ground without wind. Window glass rang in its frame. A woman looked up from a wash basin because the water in it trembled in perfect circles. In distant towers, men of power put hands on polished desks because the floor rolled once, gently, like the deck of a great ship. In a ruined field outside the city, a scarecrow turned half around on its post, though no hand touched it. The change was not loud. That was the horror of it. It was exact, measured, decided. The love of many had already grown cold. Peace had already thinned. The earth had already been worn down by dark teaching, by pride, by the long poison of false light. Now the promise of judgment moved from warning into motion. The Son of Man was drawing near for the second time, and the world did not know how few breaths stood between its old life and its last. Above the unseen rising of Lucifer, clouds were dragged across the heavens like a mourning cloth. The clear sky became bruised dark. The first seal had not simply broken a lock in heaven. It had broken the illusion that tomorrow would be normal. Listen to the silence after that truth lands. It is never empty. It is full of footsteps no one can yet hear. 4 hooves on an empty highway. The second change came fast enough to feel like a blow. 1 minute the nations were frightened. The next, they were being ridden down by forces older than all their flags. And then came the second thing no one can look away from. In that same dark hour, 4 horsemen crossed into the world, and behind them rose the man who taught frightened nations to kneel. The first rode a white horse and carried a bow. He looked like victory before anyone understood the cost. He did not arrive screaming. He arrived with the clean face of conquest, the kind that makes crowds cheer while chains are still being forged. A white horse on a blackened road, a bow with no mercy in it, a rider who moved like a promise and left like a sentence. Then the red horse came, and war stopped pretending to wait. The second rider held a sword, and blood answered him quickly. Streets that filled with trade filled with panic. Borders became wounds. Cities that once glowed at night now burned at night. Hear that steel. Hear the glass breaking. Hear the prayer cut short by an explosion at the end of the block. The third rider came on a black horse with scales in his hand. That image alone could break a strong man's sleep. A pair of scales. Hunger measured out, grain counted, bread weighed like gold, mothers standing in lines that reached around broken buildings, fathers hiding empty shelves from their children with soft voices and weak smiles. Picture the scales. This is how famine rules, not all at once, but one meal, one cupboard, one cold morning at a time. Last came the pale horse, and with him came death in its plain final shape, not as a speech, not as a rumor, as the shutting of eyes, as breath leaving, as names no one would answer to again. Pestilence moved with him, bodies weakened, graves multiplied. The pale rider did not rush because he never needed to. Society folded in on itself like burnt paper. Governments shook, then split. Markets failed, power grids died. Looters ran through the shells of stores under skies clogged with black cloud. The air turned colder by the week until an apocalyptic winter settled over the earth. Not the clean white winter of childhood. This was a hard iron winter, a winter of ash in the snow, of smoke over frozen rivers, of hands gone numb while trying to force open food tins in abandoned stairwells. And out of this fear rose the Antichrist. No one knew him at first for what he was. That was his strength. He had a face people wanted to trust, and a voice that could make lies feel like rest. His eyes held crowds the way a hook holds flesh. He spoke of order after chaos, peace after panic, bread after famine, unity after bloodshed, but his promises were hollow boards laid over a pit. Walk on them, and you still fall steep inside him for a moment. Not to honor him, to understand the rot. He had watched nations break, and what stirred in him was not sorrow but hunger. Here was his chance to receive what Lucifer always wanted, the worship given to God alone. He did not see starving people. He saw bowed heads. He did not hear cries. He heard consent. Every desperate hand reaching toward him fed the wound inside him, the old wound of wanting a throne that was never his. Do not miss this. Evil rarely begins by looking ugly. It begins by offering relief without truth. Under his rule, the collapse sped up. Armies gathered under false banners of hope. Followers multiplied. Violence became common talk. The beast tightened its grip while people called it survival. The world did not simply suffer, it submitted. And still, somewhere beyond all that noise, the one who judges kings was watching. The burned church where three voices still prayed when nations were giving themselves away. Faith did not disappear. It went underground, in a church burned black by fire, where the roof had partly fallen in, and moonlight came through broken beams. A small group gathered among the smell of ash and wet stone. The painted saints on the walls had been scarred by smoke. The wooden pews were split. One iron cross had bent sideways from heat. Yet in that wreck, people still came to whisper the words they refused to lose. There was David, a young priest whose hands still shook from burying too many bodies too quickly. He had spent his life in service, but now he lived with one hand on an old Bible and the other braced against walls that trembled from distant shelling. There was Elena, who had lost her family in the first burst of street violence and now carried grief the way soldiers carry scars, hidden under motion, always aching. There was Samuel, old, lean and steady, a man worn by years of loss who still held to the promised return with a grip stronger than youth. And then came the third thing no one expects. That same night, in a church burned down to stone and smoke, a remnant lit one small lamp and chose faith while the whole world was learning to bow. Look closely at that lamp. Its glass was cracked, its flame was low. David had to cup his hand around it to keep it from dying each time the cold wind moved through the broken nave. The Bible on his knees had swollen from damp. Several pages were stuck together with soot at the edges. Yet he found the old promises as if they had been written for that hour alone. "We have little time," he told them, his voice low because even courage had learned to speak softly. "The darkness has been released, but Christ has not forgotten us. No matter how black the night grows, he will come." Elena stared at the floor a long time before she answered. "How do we keep saying that?" she asked, "when the beast already rules the streets?" Samuel lifted his eyes. In that ruined church, with mortar dust still drifting down from one wall, the old man looked almost like part of the building itself, something battered that had refused to fall. "Because the end is not only ruin," he said. "It is judgment, and before judgment we endure. Stay in that room, hear the city outside." Gunfire in short bursts. A siren stopping halfway through its cry. Boots on pavement. Somewhere nearby, a woman shouting a name into the dark. Then silence. Then the dry groan of metal from a building settling after damage. This was the world now. Yet scattered across that broken earth were other small circles like this one. Believers hidden in cellars, in abandoned homes, in old churches men had forgotten but God had not. Some believed in Christ by name. Some clung to ancient prophecy. All of them shared one conviction. The end had come close enough to touch, and there was still one last reason to stand. David read by lamplight. Elena listened with eyes wet but unbowed. Samuel prayed with the calm of a man who feared God more than death. They had no army, no safe road, no storehouse, no leader on earth who could protect them. What they had was the last thing darkness can never digest. Trust in the one who returns. Remember, their names: Elena, Samuel, a priest, a grieving woman, an old man. No throne, no banner, no weapon except the word and the will to stay faithful. When the world measures power, it never counts people like this. Heaven does. Outside, Lucifer watched the earth bend under fear and believed the hour belonged to him. Then heaven answered. The silence that stopped armies mid-blow Armageddon did not arrive as a rumor. It arrived as the whole earth drawing breath before a scream. The ground shook so hard that trenches cracked open and abandoned cars bounced on their axles. The sky, already bruised with darkness, began to split in long bright tears from horizon to horizon, as if a hidden hand were ripping cloth above the world. Nations, weak from plague, hunger, and inner war, had gathered what was left of their strength and pushed men toward the final field. Some marched for the Antichrist. Some marched because there was nowhere left to run. All of them were being driven toward the place of ending Armageddon. In the old tongue, Har Megiddo, the mountain of battle. Remember that name. It is not just a place. It is the meeting point of pride and judgment. From the abyss and all the dark spaces under heaven, Lucifer called his hosts. Demons came under him in ranks, fierce and twisted, led by Beelzebub and Belial. Beelzebub came like rot given shape, a prince of foul dominion, hungry for ruin. Belial came dressed in deceit, a master of corruption whose favorite weapon was not flame but falsehood. Around them moved the condemned cries of rebellion, like a choir that had forgotten music and learned only rage. Then the heavens answered with light. Michael descended first, the great warrior of the armies above, sword lifted and burning. Gabriel came beside him, clothed in gold, trumpet in hand, the herald who carries the weight of divine command. Even their names struck like truth. Michael, who is like God. Gabriel, God is my strength. Speak those names slowly. They are not ornaments in the story. They are thunder made personal. The battle broke open. Light crashed into darkness. Demons surged against angels. Steel rang, but this was more than steel. This was will against will, order against chaos, truth against the oldest lie. Michael met Beelzebub in a clash so fierce the very air seemed to split around them. Every stroke of Michael's blade flashed like a star breaking free of night. Beelzebub answered with brute fury, taking blow after blow and lunging back with the madness of a creature that had forgotten all limits except hate. Gabriel met Belial, and the fight changed shape. Belial twisted the field with illusion, with bending shadows, with voices that sounded almost holy until they curdled into mockery. But Gabriel did not sway. "Truth will be revealed," he cried, and each word landed like judgment. His blade moved with clean purpose. Illusion tore apart around him. Watch the field for one long breath. Mud kicked up under armored feet. Spears snapped. Fire streaked across cloud banks. The ocean in the distance rolled back against itself as if the sea also feared what it was seeing. Mountains groaned. Wind screamed through shattered valleys. Men who had lived through plague and war fell to their knees, because this was no longer history as they had known it. This was the last war, and heaven itself was in it. And then came the third thing no one survives unchanged. In the dead center of Armageddon, while angels and demons stood locked in fury, a holy silence fell over the field, and Christ stepped out of a radiant cloud. Do not rush past this. One instant the noise was unbearable. The next it died. Swords froze in mid-swing. Horses stiffened. Demons recoiled. Angels bowed. A cloud bright as living fire came down through the torn sky, and from within it emerged Christ, the King of Kings. His robe shone with a purity no earthborn light could match. His face held peace deeper than oceans and authority harder than mountains. The sun itself looked dim beside him. Lucifer saw him and made one final rush of defiance. He raised his hands toward heaven and cried that humanity would still be his. But Christ did not strain, he did not wrestle. He lifted his hand, and blinding light struck the rebel leader full on. It was not merely force, it was rightful rule. Lucifer's resistance shattered under it. "You are defeated," Christ said, and the words rolled through the universe like thunder through the bones of the world. The Antichrist's followers scattered. The false prophet fell. Great Babylon, swollen with corruption and pride, began to collapse in one vast ruin, tower after tower dropping into dust, as if sin itself had become too heavy to stand. The battle ended not because darkness agreed to stop, but because darkness was overruled. When every dead name answered after war came the throne. Not a human throne carved for display, not a seat claimed by bloodline or force, but the throne before which all flesh must finally stand. The field of battle was gone. The smoke of Babylon had thinned. The armies were finished. Now came the hour no grave could refuse. And then came the fourth thing no one can escape. After the last battle ended, the dead rose. Their names were called before Christ, and every hidden life was opened in the light. The whole of humanity was gathered there, from the first generations to the last breath ever taken on earth. Kings stood beside beggars, mothers beside murderers, priests beside thieves. The proud had nowhere to hide their pride. The broken had nowhere to hide their wounds. Time itself seemed to stand still before that throne, because this was beyond clocks, beyond calendars, beyond all delay. See the scene. Christ stood as judge, the same one who came in glory to end the war, now ruling with perfect justice. Before him stretched a multitude like an ocean of souls, nation after nation, face after face. Every language, every age, secret. No argument could live there, no mask could hold. Books were opened, that alone should make the heart tremble. Not rumor, not opinion. Every word, every mercy given, every cruelty hidden, every prayer whispered, every lie polished to look clean. Nothing was lost, nothing misplaced, nothing forgotten. The wicked rose too, but they did not rise in beauty. Their bodies bore the mark of what they had loved. Sin had not stayed outside them. It had worked inward, carving shadow into being itself. They heard their names and stepped forward under a weight no court on earth had ever known. Last-minute excuses fell apart like dry leaves in fire. The righteous rose also, and they came changed. Their bodies were incorruptible, bright with the peace of those who had trusted the light. The old tears were gone from their faces. Fear no longer sat in their shoulders. They stood not in their own strength, but in the justice of the one who called them. Do not look away from the separation. This is the line every age has rushed toward. Those who had clung to darkness were sent into the torment they had chosen, into the closing depths where rebellion ends in loss without dawn. Those who had walked in faith, who had endured, who had loved the truth more than safety, were welcomed into the life prepared for them. The cries of the condemned rose sharp and terrible when the doors of hell shut behind them. No created sound is heavier than the sound of a door closing forever. Yet in that same hour, another sound rose too. The song of angels, the victory hymn of heaven, the joy of a kingdom finally cleared of evil. Then Christ lifted his hands. At that gesture, the old order gave way. The worn world of pain, death, plague, war, and grief passed like a shell breaking open. A new heaven and a new earth appeared, clean of corruption, free of curse, shining with a life no darkness could reach. Gardens spread where ruins had been. Rivers flashed clear as crystal. The sun was no longer needed as the old world had needed it, because divine glory itself lit all things. Hear this with your whole heart. Judgment was not the end of the story. It was the gate through which the faithful passed into restoration. And what waited beyond that gate was more beautiful than human grief had ever dared to imagine. The city with streets like living gold. The first thing the redeemed saw was light. Not morning light, not firelight, not the thin light of a moon over broken ground. This light had no shadow in it. It did not fall from above as if it might fade. It filled everything from within. It was the light of God himself, and under it the whole new creation breathed peace. Before them stood the new Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city of peace, now made new beyond all memory of the old sorrow. Its streets were of pure gold, so clear and shining they seemed almost alive, reflecting glory like still water at the center of heaven. Its gates were giant pearls, each one whole, round and bright, as if beauty had been formed out of suffering and sealed forever. Its walls gleamed like crystal. At the center stood the throne of God, and from that center all order, mercy and joy flowed outward. Look at the city close there. No siren split its calm. No locked door spoke of fear. No grave marked the edge of a road. Nations entered not to conquer, but to worship. Peoples once divided by sin, war, hunger, race, pride, and old pain stood together in one piece. The persecuted were there. The poor in spirit were there. The forgotten were remembered there. The river of life ran through the city, clear as crystal. Fields flourished. Trees gave fruit without failing. The scarred creation had been healed all the way down to its roots. No thorn remained. No curse breathed in the soil. Even the wind that moved through that place felt clean, carrying no ash, no rot, no fear. And this is where the story turns toward you, because the source of all this peace was not the gold, not the gates, not the river, not even the beauty of a world remade. It was presence, God dwelling with his people. No distance left, no veil left, no long ache of separation left. The hand that once seemed hidden had wiped away every tear. The voice once waited for in prayer now filled the city like music. If you have ever sat in the dark and wondered whether sorrow would be the longest thing in your life, hear this. It will not. If you have ever buried someone and felt the earth take more than you could bear to lose, hear this. Death does not keep what Christ has claimed. If you have ever looked at the broken shape of this world and thought evil had become too large, hear this. Evil does not get the last word. Christ does. This is why the hidden church mattered. This is why David kept reading by a weak lamp. This is why Elena kept believing with an empty place in her heart. This is why Samuel endured into old age without letting go. The city they trusted was real before they saw it. The king they waited for was already on his way, while the world was still mocking hope. Take this into yourself. The New Jerusalem is not built by fear. It is entered by those who stayed true to the light. There is no sun there because the glory of God is enough. There is no moon there because no part of that kingdom depends on borrowed light. Christ reigns there as king and shepherd both, with full authority and full tenderness. He does not merely rule the redeemed, he keeps them. And if your heart is trembling now, it should. Not because this ending is dark, but because it is so bright. It exposes every false thing you have trusted. If this finds you before dawn, so how do you live when that city is ahead of you and this broken world is still around you? You do not wait with folded hands. You do not wait like a man staring at the sky while his lamp goes out beside him. You wait like people in the story waited, awake, praying, serving, enduring, holding the word close when the night gets cold. The Great Tribulation was never only a storm around the faithful, it was also a test inside them. Would they fear more than they trust? Would they bow more quickly than they stand? Would they save their own comfort and lose their soul? This is where the final swing of the whole story lands. Not on armies, not on beasts, not on Babylon, on you. Maybe you are not standing in a burned church tonight. Maybe there are no black clouds over your roof and no rider on the road outside your town. But there is still a battle over what owns your heart. There is still a voice in the world offering peace without truth, gain without God, safety without surrender. There is still the slow cold that makes love shrink if you let it. Name that honestly. Strengthen your faith now, before fear tells you what to worship. Build a real prayer life now, before panic teaches your mouth to speak only despair. Learn the word now, before false voices become easier to recognize than the voice of Christ. Help others now, because no remnant survives alone. Rejoice even under trial, because the faithful do not wait for comfort to prove God is good. Lift your eyes to eternity, because this world, even at its worst, is still not the end. Picture David again, hand over the lamp. Picture Elena, grieving and still listening. Picture Samuel, old and unshaken. Their strength was not that they felt no fear. Their strength was that fear did not become their Lord. Now let the story become a prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, when the world shakes, keep my heart from bowing to darkness. When false peace calls my name, teach me to love truth more. When the night grows heavy, make me faithful until morning. Say that in your spirit. Make me faithful until morning. Lord Jesus, I place my fear under your feet. I place my home under your care. I place my future in your hands. Make me faithful until morning. Keep my lamp burning. Bring me into your light. And for those who feel weak tonight, pray this too. Christ, hold me when I cannot hold myself. Christ, keep me near when my faith feels small. Christ, write my name among the faithful. These are simple words, but simple words said with a true heart can carry a soul through dark valleys. Do not waste the warning in this story, and do not waste its comfort either. The same Christ who stepped onto Armageddon in blazing glory is the Christ who sees your hidden grief. The same judge before whom every name must stand is the shepherd who still calls, still warns, still saves. The same King who opened the New Jerusalem can teach you how to walk clean through a dirty age. If this found you tonight, and something in you knows you were meant to hear it, stay with us. Walk deeper into these holy mysteries with us. Let your heart stay awake. Let your lamp stay lit. And before the night ends, ask yourself one honest question the whole story has earned. If Christ opened the gates of that city before you today, what in your life would you beg him to burn away before you entered?